Welcome to Module 13, Lesson 1, Structure and Components of Research Reports. I'm genuinely excited to share this content with you because mastering research report structure is like learning the architecture of scholarly communication. Today, we'll decode the blueprints that transform your hard work into published research that advances knowledge in your field. Let me start with a story. Last year, there were two manuscripts with identical research quality. One was rejected outright, the other sailed through to publication. The difference? Structure. The rejected manuscript buried its innovation in a maze of disorganized sections, while the accepted one followed established conventions that made its contributions crystal clear. Research report structure isn't just formatting, it's the vehicle that carries your ideas from your mind to the global scholarly community. Think of it as the universal language that allows a researcher in Tokyo to immediately understand work from São Paulo or Stockholm. Today, we're going to master this language together. By the end of this lecture, you'll be able to, first, identify the key components of research reports across disciplines, because while fields vary, certain elements remain universal. Second, apply effective organization strategies for research manuscripts, moving beyond simply knowing the parts to understanding how they work together. And third, evaluate the quality of research, reporting, and published work, developing the critical eye you need as both a producer and consumer of research. These aren't just academic exercises. These skills directly impact whether your research gets published, cited, and ultimately whether it makes a difference in your field. Let's begin with IMRAD, Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. This structure dominates scientific publishing for a powerful reason. It mirrors the scientific method itself. The introduction asks, what's the problem and why does it matter? It's your opportunity to convince readers that your research addresses something significant. Methods answers, how did you investigate this? Providing the recipe others need to evaluate and replicate your work. Result states, what did you find? Presenting your discoveries without interpretation. Discussion explores, what does this mean? Connecting your findings to broader knowledge. This isn't arbitrary. It's cognitive architecture. IMRAD follows how our brains naturally process scientific information: context, process, evidence, meaning. When you violate this structure, you're fighting against your readers' cognitive expectations. The introduction follows what I call the funnel principle, starting broad and narrowing to your specific research question. But here's what many don't realize. A great introduction does four critical things. First, it establishes territory, showing the broader importance of your research area. Climate change threatens global food security. Second, it identifies the gap, what we don't yet know. However, the impact on small-scale farmers in mountainous regions remains poorly understood. Third, it occupies the gap, stating your research purpose. This study examines adaptation strategies among Andean potato farmers. Finally, it previews the value, hinting at your contribution without giving away results. Our findings reveal previously undocumented indigenous practices that could inform climate adaptation globally. This isn't just organization, it's persuasion. You're building a logical case for why your research deserves attention. The method section is where you build trust. It's your contract with readers, promising transparency and reproducibility. But here's the challenge: balancing completeness with readability. Include your research design, participants or materials, procedures, measures, and analytical approach. But don't just list. Explain your choices. Why this design? Why these participants? Why this analysis? A colleague once told me, write your methods as if you're training your replacement. That means being specific enough that someone could replicate your study, but clear enough that they understand your reasoning. Remember, in the age of reproducibility crises, a robust method section isn't just good practice, it's ethical imperative. The results section has one job: present your findings objectively. But objectivity doesn't mean boring. This is where your data tells its story. Start with your primary findings, those directly addressing your research questions. Then move to secondary discoveries. Use the show and tell principle. Figures and tables show. Text tells the story connecting them. Here's a critical tip: never make readers hunt for important findings. If something is significant, state it clearly in text, even if it's also in a table. Not everyone reads tables carefully, but everyone reads the narrative. And please, resist the temptation to interpret here. Save "this suggests" and "this implies" for the discussion. In results, stick to what you observed, not what it might mean. If results is what, discussion is so what, this is where you interpret your findings, but it's more than just speculation. It's systematic meaning making. Start by restating your key findings, briefly without repeating results. Then interpret: what do these findings mean? How do they relate to existing knowledge? Do they support, contradict, or extend current understanding? Address limitations honestly. Every study has them, and acknowledging them shows scientific maturity. But don't just list problems. Explain how they affect interpretation and what future research could address them. Finally, discuss implications. What should researchers do next? How might practitioners apply these findings? What are the broader theoretical or societal implications? The best discussions feel like a conversation with the field, respectful of what came before, honest about current contributions, and inspiring about what comes next. While IMRAD dominates the sciences, different fields have their own conventions. Humanities papers might follow a thematic structure, building arguments through theoretical exploration. Social sciences might integrate literature throughout, rather than segregating it. Qualitative research often uses a more narrative structure, weaving methods and findings together. Case studies might chronologically present events before analysis. The key isn't memorizing every variation. It's understanding that structure serves purpose. A philosophical argument needs different architecture than a clinical trial. Always ask, what structure best serves my research story and my audience's needs? When in doubt, examine recent publications in your target journal. They're your best template for field-specific expectations. Where does the literature review go? It depends. In traditional IMRAD, it's woven into the introduction, enough to establish context and gap. But many journals now want a separate literature review section after the introduction. Theoretical papers might devote half their length to literature synthesis. Systematic reviews make literature the focus. Qualitative studies might integrate literature throughout, letting it dialogue with findings. The mistake I see most often? Literature reviews that read like annotated bibliographies. Smith said this, Jones said that. Instead, synthesize. Group studies by theme, methodology, or findings. Show patterns, contradictions, evolution of thought. Your literature review should tell the story that inevitably leads to your research question. It's not just proving you've read widely, it's showing why your specific contribution matters. Theoretical frameworks are the lens through which you view your research, but where and how to present them varies significantly. In deductive research, theory comes early, usually right after the literature review. You're saying, here's the theory I'm testing. In inductive research, theory might emerge in the discussion, arising from your findings. The key is making theory work for you, not against you. Don't include theory just to sound scholarly. Show how it genuinely guides your research questions, methods, or interpretation. I once reviewed a paper that mentioned 15 theories in 2 pages, using none meaningfully. One well-integrated theory beats a theoretical name-dropping session every time. Show how your chosen framework illuminates aspects of your problem that would otherwise remain hidden. Your title is your research's first impression, and often its only impression. Most readers never get past the title. So, how do you craft one that works? Start with accuracy. Your title must honestly represent your study. Misleading titles might get clicks, but destroy trust. Include your key variables, population, and if relevant, your setting or method. But accuracy alone isn't enough. Consider these 2 titles: A Study of Exercise versus High-Intensity Interval Training. Reduces inflammatory markers in adults with type 2 diabetes. A randomized controlled trial. The second title tells readers exactly what they'll get. It has keywords for searchability, specific outcomes for interest, and method for credibility. Avoid questions and titles unless your journal explicitly allows them. Skip cute or clever unless your field appreciates it. And please, no acronyms unless universally known in your field. Your abstract is your research in miniature, typically 150 to 250 words that could determine whether anyone reads further. Many journals now require structured abstracts with explicit headings: background, methods, results, conclusions. Even if not required, think structurally. Open with 1 sentence of context. Why this matters. State your objective clearly. Describe methods briefly but specifically. Design, participants, key measures. Present main results with actual numbers, not just significant differences. Conclude with implications, not just summaries. What should readers do with this information? Here's a secret. Write your abstract last, but revise it most. I typically go through a dozen drafts because every word must earn its place. The abstract appearing in the journal is often the only part indexed in databases. Make it count. Keywords are your research's GPS coordinates in the vast academic universe. Choose poorly, and your work becomes invisible. Start with your title terms, but don't duplicate. Keyword supplement, not repeat. Think about how researchers might search for your work. What problem does it solve? What methods does it use? What population does it involve? Use controlled vocabulary when possible. Mesh terms for medical research. Psych-info thesaurus for psychology. These standardized terms improve discoverability. Mix broad and specific terms. Diabetes might be too broad alone, but paired with rural health and telemedicine, it becomes findable by the right audience. Check your target journal's keyword requirements. Some want 3 to 5, others up to 10. When in doubt, look at similar published papers for guidance. Author information seems straightforward, names and affiliations, but there's strategy here too. First, author order. In most fields, first author did the most work, last author is the senior researcher. Middle authors contributed specifically, but some fields use alphabetical order. Know your field's conventions include OR, CIDIDS. These unique identifiers follow researchers across name changes and institutions. They're becoming mandatory at many journals. Affiliations should be current at submission time. If you've moved institutions, include both with superscript numbers for clarity. The corresponding author, usually first or last, takes responsibility for communication. Choose someone with stable email access who will respond promptly. Nothing frustrates editors more than unreachable corresponding authors. Acknowledgements aren't just politeness, they're part of research transparency. Acknowledge everyone who contributed but doesn't meet authorship criteria. Statisticians who consulted, lab technicians who processed samples, colleagues who reviewed drafts. Thank funding sources explicitly with grant numbers. This isn't just courtesy, it's often contractually required. Mention institutional support, like sabbaticals or facility access. Acknowledge participants, especially in community-based research. We thank the residents of Springfield who generously shared their experiences. But keep it professional. Save personal thanks to spouses and pets for your dissertation, not journal articles. And never acknowledge someone without their permission. Association with your research might not always be welcome. Funding statements and conflict of interest disclosures are about research integrity. Readers deserve to know who paid for the research and whether authors have competing interests. For funding, list all sources with grant numbers. This work was supported by NSF grant number 12345. If unfunded, state that explicitly. This research received no specific grant from any funding agency. Conflicts of interest go beyond just financial. Do you consult for companies in this area? Own relevant patents? Have family members who might benefit? When in doubt, disclose. Even apparent conflicts matter. If you're studying a meditation app and you practice meditation, some journals want that disclosed. Transparency builds trust. Hidden interests destroy it. Remember, these aren't admissions of bias. They're demonstrations of integrity. Let's see how front matter elements work together. Your title draws readers in. Your abstract convinces them to download. Your keywords ensure they find you in the first place. Author information establishes credibility. Acknowledgements show collaborative science. Funding and conflict statements demonstrate transparency. Each element supports the others. A strong title with weak keywords fails in discoverability. Perfect keywords with a vague abstract waste the reader's click. Think systematically. Every element should reinforce your research's value proposition. This isn't bureaucracy, it's strategic communication. Front matter done well can double your readership and citations. References might seem like mere housekeeping, but they're scholarship in action. They show your intellectual lineage, allow verification, and give credit where due. Different fields use different styles. APA for psychology, MLA for literature, Chicago for history, Vancouver for medicine. But all share principles: consistency, completeness, and accuracy. Use reference management software, Zotero, Mendeley, EndNote, they're not perfect, but they prevent most errors. Still, always check their output. I once saw a paper where every journal name was italicized twice, creating bizarre formatting. Include DOIs whenever available. They're permanent links to sources. For online sources, skip, retrieve from, unless there's no DOI. Access dates are only needed for sources that might change. Pro tip, check your references against the journal's actual style, not what you think it is. Small variations matter. Some want first names, others just initials. Some abbreviate journal names, others don't. Appendices house, important material that would disrupt narrative flow. Think of them as your paper's storage room. Essential items that don't belong in the main living space include full survey instruments, interview protocols, detailed statistical outputs, or extensive tables. Anything a skeptical reviewer might want to verify, but that average readers can skip. But appendices aren't dumping grounds. Everything there should be referenced in main text. See Appendix A for full regression outputs. Organize them logically, label them clearly. Online journals increasingly prefer supplementary materials over traditional appendices. These might include videos, large datasets, or interactive visualizations. Check journal policies. Some have size limits or format restrictions. Remember, appendices should enhance, not compensate. If something's essential for understanding your core argument, it belongs in the main text. Supplementary materials have revolutionized research reporting. We're no longer limited to static text and images. Include raw datasets for transparency and reanalysis. Share analysis code for reproducibility. Upload video demonstrations of procedures. Provide interactive visualizations for complex data, but with power comes responsibility. Ensure supplements are accessible. Use common file formats. Provide codebooks for data. Comment your code thoroughly. Dead links to supplementary materials are increasingly common and incredibly frustrating. Consider long-term preservation. Journal websites might change, but repositories like GitHub, OSF, or Dryad provide permanent homes for research materials. Include persistent identifiers like DOIS for all supplementary materials. This isn't just about compliance, it's about extending your research's life and impact. Well-documented supplementary materials can spark collaborations and follow-up studies. Data availability statements are becoming mandatory, reflecting science's push toward openness and reproducibility. But what you write depends on your data's nature. For shareable data, data are available at repository under DOI number. Include any access requirements. For restricted data, data cannot be shared publicly due to reason, privacy, proprietary, etc. Data are available from contact committee for researchers who meet criteria for access. For no new data. No new data were created or analyzed in this study. Be specific about what's available. Raw data differs from processed data, differs from analysis datasets. Explain any restrictions clearly, ethical, legal, or commercial. This transparency serves everyone. Researchers can build on your work, reviewers can verify your analyses, and you're protected from endless individual data requests. Author contribution statements combat ghost authorship and gift authorship by clarifying who did what. Many journals now use the Creditee taxonomy, 14 contributor roles from conceptualization to writing. JS conceived the study, analyzed data, and wrote the initial draft. ML collected data and revised the manuscript. KP supervised the project and acquired funding. Be honest and specific. If someone only proofread, don't inflate to manuscript revision. If multiple people analyze data, say so. Ethics approval documentation varies by research type. Human subjects research needs IRB approval numbers. Animal research needs IACUC approval. Some journals want ethics statements even for secondary data analysis. Include trial registration numbers for clinical trials, protocol registration for systematic reviews. These aren't bureaucracy, they're accountability, showing you followed ethical and methodological standards from the start. Reporting guidelines emerge from a crisis. In the 1990s, systematic reviews revealed that most published research couldn't be properly evaluated due to incomplete reporting. We weren't necessarily doing bad research. We just weren't describing it adequately. CONSORT arrived first in 1996 for randomized trials, revolutionizing how we report experiments. It's not just a checklist, it's a framework ensuring readers can assess validity, applicability, and potential bias. PRISMA followed for systematic reviews, STROBE for observational studies, SRQR for qualitative research. Each addresses field-specific reporting challenges. These aren't arbitrary rules. Each item exists because its absence led to misinterpretation or inability to replicate. When CONSORT required flow diagrams showing participant progress, it revealed that many trials lost more participants than they analyzed, crucial information previously hidden. CONSORT transformed clinical trial reporting with 25 items covering title through discussion. But its centerpiece is the flow diagram, showing exactly how many people were screened, randomized, treated, and analyzed. Key requirements include describing randomization methods in detail, specifying primary and secondary outcomes up front, reporting results for all pre-specified outcomes, even null findings. CONSORT also mandates reporting harms and adverse events. This wasn't standard before. Positive results got published while negative effects stayed hidden. The power is in transparency. CONSORT doesn't make your trial better, it makes it evaluable. Readers can judge whether your randomization truly worked, whether attrition biased results, whether outcomes were cherry-picked. Many journals now require CONSORT compliance for publication. Submit the checklist with your manuscript, indicating where each item is addressed. PRISMA ensures systematic reviews are truly systematic, not just comprehensive literature reviews with fancy names. Its 27-item checklist covers the entire review process. The PRISMA flow diagram shows your search and selection process, databases searched, records identified, duplicates removed, articles screened, full texts assessed, and studies included. This transparency lets readers judge whether you might have missed relevant studies. PRISMA requires pre-specifying your protocol, ideally registering it in Prospero. This prevents changing methods based on what you find, a form of bias that can invalidate reviews. You must report your complete search strategy, every search term, every filter, every database decision. Someone should be able to replicate your search exactly. This rigor matters because systematic reviews guide practice and policy. Incomplete reporting could lead to incorrect conclusions affecting patient care or resource allocation. STROBE addresses the unique challenges of reporting observational research, cohort, case control, and cross-sectional studies. Without randomization, these studies face different validity threats requiring specific reporting. STROBE emphasizes describing your study population clearly, eligibility criteria, sources, and methods of selection, follow-up methods. Readers need to judge whether your sample represents the population you're generalizing to. It requires detailed reporting of potential confounders and how you address them. Did you measure them? How? What didn't you measure, and why? This honesty about limitations helps readers interpret findings appropriately. STROBE also mandates reporting missing data, not just how much, but patterns that might bias results. If smokers were more likely to skip follow-up visits, that matters for interpreting outcomes. Remember, observational studies provide crucial evidence when trials aren't feasible or ethical. Good reporting maximizes their value while acknowledging their limitations. Qualitative research reporting faces unique challenges. How do you transparently report interpretive processes? COREC and SRQR provide frameworks maintaining rigor while respecting qualitative traditions. Both emphasize researcher reflexivity, describing researchers' backgrounds, relationships with participants, and potential influences on interpretation. This isn't admission of bias. It's acknowledgement that the researcher is the instrument in qualitative work. They require detailed description of context, settings, time periods, cultural considerations. Qualitative findings are inherently contextual. Readers need rich description to judge transferability. Sampling strategy must be explained, not just who participated, but why they were chosen, how saturation was determined, who declined, and possibly why. This purposeful sampling differs from statistical sampling, but requires equal transparency. Analysis procedures need thorough description, coding processes, theme development, software used, triangulation methods. Readers should understand how you moved from raw data to findings. With over 400 reporting guidelines now available, choosing the right one seems daunting. Start with your study design: experimental, observational, synthesis, qualitative. That narrows options significantly. Check Equator, Network. It's the central repository for reporting guidelines. They have a decision tool guiding you to appropriate guidelines based on your research type. Don't wait until writing to consult guidelines. Use them during planning. They'll remind you what information to collect. You can't report randomization details you didn't document. If multiple guidelines apply, maybe you did a mixed methods trial. Use both relevant guidelines. If guidelines conflict, prioritize your target journal's requirements. Extensions exist for specific contexts. CONSORT has extensions for cluster trials. Non-pharmacological interventions. Patient-reported outcomes. These add specificity without replacing core guidelines. Remember, guidelines are floors, not ceilings. They ensure minimum necessary information, but your specific study might require additional detail. Let's step back and see how everything integrates. Your manuscript is an interconnected system where each element supports the whole. Your title and abstract work together as your research's advertisement. Your introduction sets up expectations that your methods must fulfill. Your results deliver on promises made in methods. Your discussion connects findings back to the introduction's framing. Front matter provides context and credibility. Back matter provides verification and extensions. Reporting guidelines ensure nothing crucial gets forgotten. This isn't a rigid template, it's a flexible framework. A case study might emphasize context over generalizability. A theoretical paper might privilege conceptual development over empirical results. But all successful papers share this internal coherence, where every section serves the overall narrative. The goal isn't just publication, it's communication. Every structural decision should ask, does this help readers understand and evaluate my research? Let me share the most common structural problems I see as a reviewer and how to fix them. Bloated introductions that review everything ever written. Solution: focus on directly relevant literature that builds to your specific question. Method sections that hide crucial details and previously described. Solution: include enough detail for independent evaluation, even if referring to prior work. Results that mix findings with interpretation. Solution: save all suggests, indicates, demonstrates for discussion. Discussions that just repeat results. Solution: start with brief summary, then focus on meaning, implications, and future directions. References that are incomplete or incorrectly formatted. Solution: use reference management software and double check against journal style. These aren't just formatting issues, they're barriers to understanding that can sink otherwise excellent research. As we conclude, here are your action steps. First, find 3 recent papers from your target journal. Analyze their structure. What's consistent? What varies? What works well? Second, create a structural template for your next manuscript. Include all sections and subsections with word count targets. Third, identify which reporting guidelines apply to your research. Download the checklist now. Don't wait until you're writing. Remember, mastering research report structure isn't about conformity, it's about clarity. When structure becomes second nature, you're free to focus on what matters most, your ideas and their contribution to knowledge. Next lesson, we'll dive deep into writing strategies that bring these structures to life with clear, compelling prose. Until then, happy structuring.